I'm going to share with you a story that changed my perspective on life. It's a story about a man who was searching for happiness, but couldn't find it anywhere. He had a successful career, a loving family, and a comfortable home, but he felt empty and dissatisfied. He decided to travel the world, hoping to discover the secret of happiness. He visited many places, met many people, and learned many things, but he still felt unhappy. He tried different philosophies and practices, but none of them gave him the peace he was looking for. He became frustrated and disillusioned, wondering if happiness was even possible. One day, he came across a small village in the mountains, where he saw a group of monks living in a simple monastery. He was curious about their way of life, so he decided to stay with them for a while. He observed how they spent their days in meditation, prayer, and service, without any attachment to worldly possessions or pleasures. He noticed how they were calm, serene, and joyful, despite having nothing. He asked one of the monks how they could be so happy with so little. The monk smiled and said, "Happiness is not something you find outside yourself. Happiness is something you create within yourself. Happiness is not dependent on what you have or what you do. Happiness is dependent on how you think and how you feel. Happiness is not a destination you reach. Happiness is a journey you take." The man was puzzled by this answer. He asked the monk to explain more. The monk said, "Happiness is not a fixed state of being. Happiness is a dynamic state of becoming. Happiness is not something you achieve once and for all. Happiness is something you cultivate every day. Happiness is not something you get from others. Happiness is something you give to others. Happiness is not something you possess. Happiness is something you express." The man was intrigued by this answer. He asked the monk to teach him how to create happiness within himself. The monk said, "Happiness is not a complicated formula. Happiness is a simple practice. Happiness is not a matter of doing more or having more. Happiness is a matter of being more or giving more. Happiness is not a matter of changing your circumstances or your environment. Happiness is a matter of changing your attitude or your perspective." The man was inspired by this answer. He asked the monk to show him how to practice happiness every day. The monk said, "Happiness is not a rare occurrence. Happiness is a common choice. Happiness is not a special event. Happiness is an everyday habit. Happiness is not a big deal. Happiness is a small gesture. Happiness is not a lofty goal. Happiness is a lowly act." The man was moved by this answer. He thanked the monk for his wisdom and guidance. He decided to follow the monk's advice and practice happiness every day in his own way. He realized that happiness was not something he had to search for in the world, but something he had to discover in himself. He returned to his home, his family, and his career, but with a new outlook on life. He started to appreciate what he had instead of complaining about what he lacked. He started to enjoy what he did instead of worrying about what he missed. He started to share what he knew instead of hoarding what he learned. He started to live in the present moment instead of dwelling on the past or fearing the future. He started to express gratitude for everything instead of taking anything for granted. He started to spread kindness to everyone instead of expecting anything in return. He started to create happiness within himself and radiate happiness around him. He found happiness.